there can never be any economy. There can never be an economy for Ghana without the environment. That's the starting point. It's the bedrock for any economic modeling. There can never be an economic recovery, economic development without ecological sustainability. It doesn't happen anywhere in the world. Any serious country, the first thing you want to preserve in the midst of development is the planet Earth. Is the planet. So once you destroy the environment, you destroy your ecosystem, especially destroying the rural economy with water bodies as the bedrock of that ecosystem, then just know you are finished. Your economy would exist in a vacuum. It will be a theoretical economy. That's the starting point. What the world is discussing right now is how development at the national level can meet the 5 Ps. I will explain that. You will notice that in the last 5 years or so, at the private sector level, at the corporate level, the understanding is that it is not sufficient to make profit. The quality of the profit, the destructive processes that the profit is generated is as important as the headline profit you report. So at the private sector level, we talk about the triple bottom line: economic, ecological, social. So the understanding is that it is not good enough to say we are profitable. That profit must reflect the social standing, the community, the society where you operate. It must also preserve the ecology. So these days we talk about ESG. I'm sure you are familiar with that. From regulatory point of view, we are looking at how do we embellish ESG in the prudential requirement, regulations, and all of that, from the central bank perspective, from regulation of insurance, and then pensions. So you can see how we are embracing that environmental social governance. It is no longer a choice. It is part of the larger economic context in which businesses operate. That's the understanding. When you come to the national level, the understanding is that development at the national level must also reflect the 5 Ps. In other words, it must preserve the planet Earth. It must. So if you look at the discussion about the energy transition, fossil fuel, and the debate and all of that, we have come a long way. And in fact, let me say, before I explain the other piece, let me explain that the reason why increasingly countries are looking beyond GDP is the fact that GDP is a poor reflection of the destructive process of growth, that merely focusing on GDP, as we have been doing in Ghana. So somebody will say, if you ban illegal mining, if you ban mining, the economy will suffer. They are looking at the output, they are looking at GDP. But the reality is that the destructive processes in generating the GDP is poorly reflected in the GDP calculation. So if you focus solely on GDP output as a policy prescription, you are going to end up in the medium to the long term with probably a negative sum game, not even zero sum game, to even talk about positive sum game. That's the understanding. So it has to preserve the planet Earth. Again, it must also reflect peace, and it must be people focused. It must be people focused. It must reflect partnership. It must reflect prosperity. That is how we look at it. So you can't say that the economy is recovering, the economy is rebounding in the midst of this environmental destruction.